Couple of days planned at Glen Nevis and staying at the campsite here so that I can hook up and stay warm as it's -7 tonight. But what a spot. I'd spent pretty much the whole of 2019 driving through Fort William and turning left, but I wanted to explore Glen Nevis before the season ended, before the days got too short and it got too cold, with a view to spending more time up there in 2020. So on the basis of a decent forecast, I drove up on a Monday morning, having reserved a pitch at the Glen Nevis campsite, which I've got to say is a really good campsite. It's really well situated in the Glen. You just drive about 200 yards past the visitor centre and it's on the right. Checked in, got my spot, and I think every pitch on that site must have a decent view. I was certainly delighted with the view I got on the campsite. You do need to reserve on this campsite. I tried to get in the week before, but it was fully booked. Anyway, it was time for lunch, so I decided to walk into Fort William, stopping off at the visitor centre first and then doing a tour of Cow Hill. There are actually a couple of walks around Cow Hill. I started off on the road to get to the visitor centre. The Glen Nevis Visitor Centre is actually one of the starting points for climbing up Glen Nevis across this bridge. The other starting point is the youth hostel down the road further into the Glen, which is where I started the following day. I didn't actually go in the visitor centre, I just wanted to check out whether you could do any wild camping in the car park, which you can't. And as of doing this video, it was £1 an hour or £4 for the day. Anyway, I carried on into Fort William. Instead of walking on the road into Fort William, I actually joined the Cow Hill Trail at the Braveheart car park, which is a bit further on the left, and then through the town to the pier, which is where the Crannog restaurant is. And I've been before. It's a seafood restaurant. It's absolutely superb if you like seafood. After a large portion of mussels, I clearly needed to work it off. Just headed south, took a left up the hill to the start of the west side of the trail that goes around Cow Hill. So you could actually walk up to the summit on this trail, but I cut across and headed back to the campsite and down through the woods, which was a really good walk actually. Great views of Glen Nevis on this trail. It's a fairly easy walk and really set the agenda for the following day, for the Tuesday, when I wanted to see how far I could get up Glen Nevis and up to the snow line. I was up and out early on the Tuesday morning as the sun was coming up over the mountains after a really cold night. Very pleased with the Webasto diesel heater in the van, I've got to say. So it's just along the road from the campsite down the Glen to the youth hostel and the bridge opposite, which marks the start of the route up to Glen Nevis. Once you've crossed the bridge, if you don't fancy going up Glen Nevis, you can actually walk back along the river to the visitor centre. First off was to check the information boards and obviously making sure that someone knows where you are. What you don't get from the maps is just really how steep and demanding the route up to the peak is. I was on the other side of the glen the day after, and that line just shows you the route up the side of the mountain. The first part of the walk from the bridge is quite demanding. It goes straight up the hill to join the path that comes from the visitor centre. Starts off flat though. And what I hadn't realised is that much of the track up to the peak is covered in these rocks, like a pavement almost, which is great news to stop erosion, but with the frost on it, they were really quite slippy, and I did end up falling quite a few times. And a lot of these stones were also quite smooth because there were just so many people walking up Ben Nevis on a regular basis. They've smoothed off some of the rocks, but the views are fabulous. I mean, it really is a wonderful vista, as long as you remember to turn around and look behind you when you're walking up. As you get to almost the halfway point, there's a plain and a lock up there, and there's a choice of paths. You can either carry on going to Ben Nevis, or you can actually take the trail alongside the lock and around the back of Ben Nevis. I carried on up the trail. As I understand it, this burn marks the halfway mark up to the peak, and it must be absolutely magnificent after a huge rain, but you get your feet wet because you do actually have to ford it. There's no bridge. The paved trail continues for a while after the burn, and the views continue to be magnificent. On the opposite side there, you can actually see the West Highland Way cut into the side of the hill on the other side of the glen. This is about the point when the trail turns into the mountain track, and this is the point when I also knew that I was going to have some difficulties because I suffer from vertigo. In fact, 2 years ago I was doing the Coma Pedrosa and got up the trail to within this far from the peak, and it's a 2,943 metre peak. Got vertigo, had to go back, which is exactly what I did on Tuesday. I was in no way disappointed with having to turn back because it was totally predictable, particularly given how slippy the track was. So I made my way back down, enjoyed the views. I was so lucky with the weather and the clearness of the day to be able to see so far. As is my tradition on these trips away, I then went to the Ben Nevis bar, which is part of the campsite, and had fish and chips. They were totally excellent, as was the lager. Just setting off for the West Highland Way. Really cold. So hopefully the sun will come out and cut through this icy fog. Fingers crossed. On the Wednesday, only had the morning. I had to get away before lunch, and so I just decided to walk up the Highland Way to the fort up on the hill, Dunderdale Fort. The mist never really lifted out of the valley, as you'll see, but what great views. Funny on these sort of walks where the sun is always somewhere else, especially when you're setting off early in the morning. One of of the things I do like to watch and just take my time over is the movement of the clouds in the valley. They seem to have a total mind of their own, especially as the sun starts to heat up a bit. Don't know why, but I was kind of reminded of Swiss Family Robinson when I got here. It's about an hour to walk up to the fort, and it is quite a little walk away from the West Highland Way. The fort itself is really just a mound, and there's not much to see. It's very grassy. It is actually, when you look up, that there's plenty to see, because the fort really does command the whole of the glen. After watching the clouds for a little longer, it was time to set off back down the hill. It's a steady walk, not too punishing at all, and actually I prefer that sort of trail to the climb up Glen Nevis, but that's maybe because it's easier. Absolutely can't wait to get back next year and really explore the Glen and Glen Nevis and the surrounds. There's just so much to see, so looking forward to that when the days start to get a bit longer again and it gets a bit warmer. Thanks for watching. Really enjoyed making this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.